Cool.
I got it. Hello, everybody. How's everyone doing? We got a full room today, all for our very exciting topic of self-sovereign identity. Can't wait to learn all about it. But welcome to the Catalyst Women's Breakout session after Town Hall, where we talk about important topics and get to know some of the women in our community and women who are doing really cool things in Web3. And we're here to build a relationship and empower diversity. This is not just an exclusive room to females. This is a room welcoming to everybody. And so we're just here to learn about self-sovereign identity today. And Allison Fromm, the expert, is going to share a little bit about it with us. And I mean, she's just an amazing woman. You are doing things at a level that I can't even, coming from your background of, traditional finance to Web3. I'm excited to learn more about you and learn more about what you have going on with your Catalyst proposal and SSI. So take it away.
Thank you so much, Dana. That's such a kind introduction. And I am thrilled to be here. I'm so impressed with what you and Juliana and all of the others have done with this space and this group. It's just really a wonderful thing for the community. And thank you for giving me the platform to talk about SSI, which is self-sovereign identity. And thank you for calling me an expert. I would say that I aspire to being an expert. I'm still early in my SSI journey, but I'm really excited that Ruslan and Victor are here. They are the true experts, and we're working together, which I will get into in a moment. But I'm going to jump right in by sharing my screen. I hope. Always the most nerve-wracking part of any presentation for me is if I actually manage to get you to see my screen. So can you see that? That was a yes? Okay.
Yes, we see.
Excellent. Okay, good. So I am going to be talking about this thing we call SSI, which stands for Self-Sovereign Identity, and Atala PRISM. And my objectives for what I'm going to cover. So I'll start by discussing the problem. So what problem are we trying to solve? And the problem is the internet identity challenges. Then the solution, which is self-sovereign identity. And then I will conclude by talking about my proposal, which is a way to use SSI in Catalyst. So the agenda, which is basically the same thing. But I'm going to start with identity, with what is identity, and end with questions. But if you do have questions as I go along, please don't hesitate to interrupt me. I'm more than happy to take questions as we go. Okay, so when we talk about identity, what do we mean? So identity just means some kind of identifier plus some kind of credential equals identity. So let's break that down. What's an identifier? So if you think about the real world, we're going to talk about digital identity, but before we get there, let's talk about the real world. Your identifiers are things that you own and control or are. So like your signature, your name, your face, your fingerprint. These are, of course, locally created. They're of course decentralized. They're of course locally maintained, and they're unique. They're what makes you you. Those are identifiers. And then we think about credentials. So we have all kinds of credentials, and they're issued by lots of different sources and entities and organizations. Passports, driver's license, library cards, health insurance cards, gym card, diplomas. You could probably think of a million more examples. In the real world, in the pre-internet world, we held those in our wallets or our briefcases or our filing cabinets, and they're controlled by us. We decide when to take them out and show them to somebody, and typically we know when we're sharing them because we're the ones doing the sharing. But in the internet world, there are some problems with digital identity. So what are those problems? And these are the problems that we're going to talk about how we solve. So when it comes to the internet, the problem is that no one knows who's on the other side of a transaction. You have two machines talking to each other, and it's hard to know who's there on the other end of the screen. So the internet Web 2 solution is that the user creates an account with a company, and that account has a login and a password. So think you set up an email account. You create an email address and a password, and you do that with some centralized provider, Google or Outlook or Yahoo or whoever. And those companies then maintain the login and the password centrally. The company owns that account, and you don't exist on the internet if you don't have an account. So this leads to a lot of problems. I mean, first of all, we have to remember more and more and more passwords. So the average person is expected to remember 100 different passwords, and sometimes it feels like even more than that. And that number is only growing. So it's increased 25% just between 2019 and 2020. And so of course, people use easy to guess passwords because they have too many to remember, which is of course a security risk. And by the way, interim tip here, password managers are a wonderful solution to keep track of all of those many passwords until we get SSI fully rolled out, but I jump ahead. Another problem with internet credentials is that large amounts of centrally stored data provide what the industry term is these honeypots. So this huge collections of data that thieves have a big incentive to attack. So I don't know if you remember, but in 2017, Yahoo announced that 3 billion accounts had been hacked. In 2021, there were a record 1,862 data compromises in the US alone, and that was a 68% increase. And just in the US, 294 million people had their data compromised. And the average data breach cost 3.8 million. And a new thing has started to try to address the problem of all of these multiple passwords that we have to maintain, is that you can use credentials from one site to log into another. So you use your Yahoo account to log into 5 other sites, but now if your Yahoo account and password is compromised, you've just given control of 5 other things as well. So that's not a great solution. And then there's the loss of privacy. So private companies monitor and track our behavior because we're using our email address to do a million different things on the web. So if you've ever been online shopping for something, and then 5 minutes later, you're on Twitter and you see an ad for that thing that you were just shopping for, that's because they're tracking your behavior behind the scenes and using your data to sell advertising. And if you want a really chilling view into the amount of data that companies are collecting on us and what they do with it, I'd highly recommend reading The Uncanny Valley about a woman working in Silicon Valley. And then finally, the companies have all the power. So when you sign up for an email account or a Amazon account, you're forced to sign their user agreement where they have all of the control. You basically have no rights. And if they decide to close your user account, there's not a whole lot you can do about it. And if the company closes an account, you lose all your data. And this is actually a very personal example for me. This is a long time ago and I'm going to date myself, but I had a Hotmail account and I was living in a different place and I had connected with people, again, this was before social media, my only way of connecting with them was my email. And for some reason, when I moved back at the time to the US, Hotmail shut down my account, no explanation for why, and no way to recover the data. And so I lost absolutely all of my connections because all of that data was stored with Hotmail, not with me. And I mean, it's not an exaggeration to say that in today's internet world, you don't exist online without an account, and that account is controlled by a private company. Okay, so with that cheerful picture, we're going to move on to talk about what's the solution. And the solution is self-sovereign identity, which is a relatively new but growing in strength idea for how to solve these problems. So in the real world, we talked about an identifier is your fingerprint or your face. It's locally created, it's locally maintained, it's decentralized and unique. So what modern cryptographic techniques do is allow an individual a way to create what's called a decentralized identifier. So it's the equivalent of your face, your fingerprint. It's created by you. You don't need any third party to give it to you. It's created by your device and a software program, and it's locally maintained on your own device. So, and it's therefore decentralized, and it's completely unique. The software and the cryptography allows you to create a completely unique DID that will be your unique identifier, just like your fingerprint. And then we talked about in the real world, we have credentials, which are issued by many sources, held in a wallet, and then controlled by you. In the self-sovereign identity world, we have what are called verifiable credentials. And these are analogous. They're issued by many sources in theory. We're getting there slowly. and they're held in the owner's electronic wallet, which is a bit like a cryptocurrency wallet and a bit like your old, physical wallet where you held your driver's license and your credit cards. But what the self-sovereign identity technology allows the owner of those credentials to do is to completely control who sees the data and how it's shared, and to log every interaction with your data. So self-sovereign identity does for identity what blockchain does for money. So I use this example because we're all here in the Cardano Catalyst community. We're probably somewhat familiar with the blockchain revolution, but if you think about blockchain in the legacy finance world, the bank controls your account. In the blockchain world, you create your own decentralized wallet and you become your own bank. And so self-sovereign identity is the same concept. In the legacy internet world, identity is centrally controlled by some company. But in the self-sovereign identity world, you become your own identity provider. It's a decentralized identity that's controlled by you. So this solves a lot of the problems that I had just been talking about. It's a reduction in password chaos because just like you have a seed phrase for your cryptocurrency wallet, you can have a seed phrase for your identity wallet. And that identity wallet can hold many different virtual credentials, and the digital wallet can create many different decentralized identifiers all linked to the same seed phrase. So in theory, vastly reducing the number of passwords that you have to maintain. In addition, because you're storing your verifiable credentials, call them VCs, and your decentralized identifiers, your DIDs, locally, companies don't hold large amounts of personal data. You hold that data locally on your own device. So yes, a thief could still try to hack into your phone, but the benefit that they're going to get from taking that effort is that they're only going to get one person's data. They're not going to get the millions, so same hacking effort, but they're not going to get the millions or billions of records that they get when they attack these big collections of centralized data. So in theory, this could really reduce the amount of money that companies need to spend protecting data records from hacks. And just as an example, anyone in the US probably remembers the Equifax data breach. It cost that company $1.4 billion due to the hack of data from 147 billion different members. I mean, the numbers are just staggering. So in the self-sovereign identity world, it gives users back their privacy. So the user controls how the data is shared. Your VC is stored in your own wallet, and a verifier can confirm that your credential is valid without actually having access to the data. And the classic example in the self-sovereign identity world is that today, if you want to rent a car and you have to prove to the car rental agency that you're over 21, the only thing they need to know about you is that you're over 21. They don't actually need to see your driver's license with your height and weight and your address and your birthday. All they need to know is that you're over 21. So the cryptography of self-sovereign identity allows you to choose exactly how much information you share and with whom. So with a verifiable credential, you could prove to the car rental company that you're of the age to rent a car without actually having to give all of the other data that's associated with that credential. And the wallet that you use to keep your credentials could keep a log and track every data exchange every time your data is shared with somebody. Whereas in today's Web 2 world, you have no idea how your data is being shared and used and sold to create the advertising that funds the internet that we have today. And in the self-sovereign identity world, you can use a separate DID for each interaction. And so that means that companies just can't track or monitor behavior in the same way. And having a separate DID for every interaction allows users to have peer-to-peer connections that don't rely on third-party controlled accounts. And so in the DID world, there's no ownership or control of a relationship with the other. It's a connection. And because the user keeps all of their own data, they can take it to a new platform if they wanted to, which you can't do today. If you decide you don't want to participate in Twitter anymore, that's fine, you can close your account. but all of your data is on the Twitter platform and you've lost it. So that's a really high level overview of what self-sovereign identity is trying to do. The self-sovereign identity industry is global and multifaceted. So what Cardano has done is develop an implementation of the self-sovereign identity concepts and specifications, and that technology is called Atala PRISM. So when you hear people talk about Atala PRISM or PRISM, that is the Cardano software that is written to the specifications that have been defined by the self-sovereign identity industry. It's not the only one. There are lots of different flavors and companies and chains and protocols that are working in this space, but PRISM is the Cardano implementation. Okay, so this all sounds great, this brand new world of self-sovereign identity, solving all of those problems that I just mentioned, but there's a bit of a chicken and an egg or a sunrise problem where how do you get from where we are today to that vision of the future that, in my opinion, would be so much better? And so what I'm proposing to do is take a very specific, small, but relevant use case to start to implement self-sovereign identity that would be a proof of concept and start getting people working with the technology, because the best way to understand how something works is to use it. And so what I've done with the proposal that I'll talk about now is try to come up with a simple use case that would be a proof of concept to demonstrate to everyone and anyone how this technology would actually work in practice. So since we're all here, I probably don't need to give a huge background on Project Catalyst, but just very briefly, I think we all know that anyone can request funds from the Treasury through a proposal. Anyone can serve as a community advisor, a CA. CAs then rate proposals. Veteran community advisors review the CA work. Voters then view the proposal with CA ratings, and those CA ratings play a huge role in determining funding. And then the Cardano Treasury pays CAs based on the quantity and quality of their work. So you probably know, I think Catalyst is fantastic. I think the CA process is fantastic. I truly am. It sounds cheesy, but I wake up excited every day to participate in the world's largest decentralized innovation fund, but there are some challenges with the CA process. So anonymity of CAs is great, but it allows for fake profiles and gaming of the system. And there are real issues with low quality of CA reviews. So in Fund 8, which we've just concluded, we haven't concluded Fund 8, we concluded the assess QA phase, but VCAs excluded 36% of assessments. So that's a third of assessments that were written were excluded. And it was even higher in Fund 7, it was 46%. And then there's the issue of scalability. About 1,000 proposals were submitted in Fund 7 and 8. And so we're aiming for a minimum of 3 assessments per fund. 5 would be better, but that's a minimum of 3,000 assessments needed per fund. And then there are issues of CA turnover. There's no metric or incentive for consistent participation. So how are we going to tie these two things together? Well, my proposal is to take to create a qualifying course, or rather, in the proposal, the project that I'm envisioning, I would work with an educational group, institution, team of some kind who would offer a free virtual course. And this virtual course would describe the basic CA competencies. So what are the minimum requirements that a person would need to become a CA? Anyone wishing to serve as a community advisor would complete the course. The educational institution would issue the CA a verified credential, a VC. So this is the kind of digital self-sovereign identity credential that I've just been talking about. And that would be issued digitally when the CA completes the course. And then the CA would hold that credential in their own self-sovereign identity wallet. And then when the CA goes to sign into IdeaScale and start work as a CA, they would need to present that credential to IdeaScale, IOG. Hopefully someday that would be the community directly. And that would be a prerequisite for writing assessments. So the flow, this is a classic diagram in self-sovereign identity world. The terms that are used are probably not really relevant for this group, but just in case you hear them somewhere else, the person issuing the person creating the credential is called the issuer. That would be this educational group. They issue a VC to the holder, that's the CA, and then the CA presents the credential to the verifier, that would be IOG, in order to unlock the capacity to write reviews. So what's the point of all of this? So from the CA side, requiring each CA to complete a course would ensure proof of humanity, but using SSI would allow anonymity to be maintained. The course would help ensure that the CA has the minimum knowledge required for the role, and the CA would demonstrate some motivation to invest some time in the process. One thing that has come up is that perhaps giving the CA an onboarding course would increase the CA confidence that they have the skills needed to perform the work, and it could serve as a networking and community building opportunity for new CAs. But importantly, issuing the CA with a DID, requiring the CA to have a DID, could provide building blocks for a later reputation system that would be tied to that DID. And I think one of the most important benefits that we would see by using this SSI technology in the CA process is that the data would start to be stored outside of idea scale. So one of the bottlenecks or stumbling points with the Catalyst process is all of the data that we're creating right now is stored inside of idea scale. And so great projects like AIM and Lido Nation that are building these tools, they have to negotiate with the idea scale APIs and get the data out. But SSI really offers the potential to turn that around and have each CA store their data in their own wallet. And using SSI then provides greater security and less chance of anonymity being compromised, because the data isn't stored in idea scale, it's stored locally with the CAs. And that's a very real problem. We nearly had a compromise of CA anonymity in Fund 7. And then this would give greater flexibility and opportunity for CAs to use their data for other purposes and other platforms that might grow as the SSI world expands. So the core team that I'm working on for the proposal, I'm Allison Fromm. I recently launched a company, Crypto Alley, to do this work. Kenrick Nelson has been partnering with me. You might remember that he was the circle rep for CAs in Fund 7. And then the critical partner, my background is in finance and business development, not coding. And although I was an Atala PRISM pioneer, I realized very quickly that I was not going to be able to write the code for all of this by myself. So I was very lucky to find the Proofspace team, which Victor is here from Proofspace along with Ruslan. And they have built they've been working in this space for years and are now adapting all of the technology that they have created over time to run on the Atala PRISM using the Atala PRISM SDK and implementation. So they will actually be providing the technology and the tools to bring this project to life. So just a quick plug, please consider voting for the project in Fund 8. The link through the AIM voter tool is there. I can provide it in the chat later. And so I wanted to close by returning to the original objectives, which was to talk about the problem of internet identity challenges, describe the solution, and then describe my proposal. So question to all of you, how did I do in meeting those objectives? And do you have any questions for me? And with that, I will also say thank you and then stop sharing my screen so that we can go back to gallery view for any questions.
Thank you, Allison, for such an informative presentation and educational. I learned a lot. Thank you for breaking that down for a 5th grade level, because that's what I needed to understand. In order for me to understand and regurgitate it to others, it needs to really be broken down, and you did just that. So thank you. Yeah, I think that you did. Anybody else? Maybe show of hands, or I think that she did. You're just trying to do an initial proof of concept just to get the ball rolling and to show that this type of thing works. And honestly, I think that in addition to the CA process, this is probably need for the proposer as well. You know,
Yeah.
there needs to be, and I was talking to Tivo, there's a meeting that's going to be happening, I guess. Hopefully I can join it, but there needs to be some sort of process that a proposer goes through in order to, I mean, not because we're trying to gatekeep and keep people from proposing, but just to make sure people know how to do it correctly. Yes, there's so many resources out there, but it is daunting to understand where to go, who to do it with, and, you know, what are the right ones and all of this stuff. And, you know, this is my second funding round, and I still think that I didn't do it correctly all the way. And for me, who went through all of the different courses and the one-on-ones and all that stuff, like that shouldn't be, you know? So I definitely think that there should be some type of module educational system that at least we can get and then that'll help the process all the way through. You fix the root of the problem, and then at the CA level and all of the other levels that follow it, it's not going to be as daunting to fix some of those problems. So I think that this is a proposer solution too. I totally love that PC.
I totally agree. And I see the CA onboarding course as truly the tip of the iceberg, that it would be it would be critical to expand the concept of DIDs to every role in the Catalyst ecosystem, and probably most critically voting, because there are all sorts of issues that can come up around identity and governance and voting, and we could move to I mean, this is going in a whole different direction, but let me phrase it like this. You can't have one person, one vote without some concept of identity. And so doing that in a way that also preserves anonymity is really crucial. So my long-term vision, and I see Ellen, if I'm saying your name right, has a question, but my long-term vision would be to start with Catalyst and really teach myself how this works in the process of rolling it out through to Catalyst. But also I think Catalyst is a really friendly environment of people who are familiar with the concept of wallets and digital credentials. And then bring DIDs and self-sovereign identity throughout the whole Catalyst process. But then my bigger vision is to then sell the technology or deliver the technology to the use cases that make the most sense globally. And so then spread more usage of Cardano and all kinds of different use cases to businesses everywhere that would have a need for self-sovereign identity. I mean, the applications are literally endless. So it's very exciting.
That's awesome. Ellen, did you want to say something before Marta goes?
I just want to say, I just want to plug in here and just to congratulate actually Allison for this great presentation. One of the best presentations I've ever seen in terms of design, presenting what you're saying, so clear, so concise. I'm so impressed, honestly, because I all the time see presentations that it's really, and the problem is so important. And I really wish to see that much over Cardano, but in a global scale. And I would be very curious to see how the big companies that roll now the world will see this solution, because you will kind of break their model, because so many companies make money from this data right now. And I imagine how difficult will be that, but it's a great challenge to solve. That was it.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much.
I have to leave in 10 minutes. So I'd like to congratulate Allison for the proposal and presentation. Is quite ambitious. Actually, in these meetings, I have been before to another town hall that another person presented the sovereign self-identity, something like that. And what happened is, I'm a researcher in bioethics and AI and emerging technologies and things like that. So the first thing I was concerned, it was what about the people who are not in the, they are not in the internet, because that happened a lot. So I think Allison's presentation addressed this question too, what I think is cool. The project is very ambitious, so I'd like to understand more about the project, like phase and what are the main challenges to make these, concrete, like to make things come together. And suddenly I blink, and then And then Allison said something that's related to the catalyst. So for me, it was like a big jump, but I understand since the project is big, it's you know, broad, and so you were kind of thinking about doing a smaller thing to implement in the catalyst process. And I think that is another discussion that I've been is the first time I participate as a CA, and it has been quite overwhelming to see all the messages, but I can see that is something going on that people want to kind of discuss more, to change things. And I think it's okay for the people who are going to propose, because people can search and see. I'm an academic person, so for every journal I have to see what is the format, how to do it. So I think who is going to propose can do that. I think it's good to offer mentorship for the people who have more difficulties, but I think the evaluation process it's complicated, because maybe, yeah, there are things to discuss, like to separate people, like looks like anyone can be a CA, it's cool, but maybe you can be a CA for certain proposals, like community oriented, or, you know, things like that. And then there are some things which require some specific knowledge that not everyone has. So it becomes like, even for me, if I receive some call from a journal that want me to evaluate something that I don't have a deep knowledge on it, I would refuse. But in this process, I thought, wow, for this project, I would need to know more. But I mean, if a lot of people are doing this, so I guess it's more like looking the broad things, like what these guys are proposing, if they are able to address what they are proposing, how much. So I could put the things together, but I think there are things to discuss, and this is another issue. So I kind of understand that you were thinking about an application based on this concept that could help the process. So yeah, so and anyway, congratulations, and I'd like to learn more about what you were proposing.
Thank you. I appreciate the comment. Oh, sorry, Dana.
No, I was just going to say thank you, Alon, for your comments, but go ahead, Allison, and then Marta.
And one thing I wanted to follow up on that you said, having specialized knowledge to be a CA and review in some challenges. One of the things that could develop out of this first, initial project would be the idea that CAs could build reputation by collecting different credentials for different skill sets. So, maybe you could get a credential for being a Haskell developer, or you could get a credential for marketing, or you could get a credential for financial analysis. And you could build an identity by collecting those credentials from various sources. And so it's really it's referred to as more of a bottom-up building of identity, rather than having a company that gives you your identity and you take that from a separate third party, but you start to collect different pieces of information about yourself from lots of different decentralized sources. And that could feed into the concept of a reputation model.
Marta.
Hi, Allison. Excellent.
Hi, Marta.
Really loved it. Really simple. And so really, that's so helpful. I think my question might be for your developers. Are they in this room? Is that correct? Are they here today?
Yeah, so we do have the Proof Space team today. I just want to clarify, I would love to, but I can't call them my developers. Proof Space is an independent company that provides a no-code solution for SSI implementation. So I'm lucky to get to partner with them and make use of their tools in their dashboard. And if you have more specific questions, I can let them speak to that.
Okay, and maybe you can answer the question too. I just don't know, so I'm not sure. But so in the XR space, people talk a lot about homomorphic encryption, and as a solution, as the only solution for to be able to keep parts of your identity to private, sort of breaking down your identity as you described today. You described breaking it down. So if you were to go into a specific use case, like the CA case, you don't have to share everything, or if you have to like prove your age or something like that, you don't have to provide everything. So that's always referred to in those spaces as homomorphic encryption. And then Charles, during one of his presentations, he said that homomorphic encryption was too expensive. And then I asked some people about that, and they said, in terms of like what Atala PRISM is doing or what we're thinking about doing, and they were saying, well, it can be zero knowledge proofs can be a way to provide that same type of solution. And since you in your presentation you described that, like breaking down, what needs to be shared, and that's saved on your wallet, saved in your on your phone. So I wondered, so how's that encryption occurring? Is it a zero knowledge proof model? Is that what is being used? So if anybody could help me understand that, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
I see Marta, Victor and Nick.
Yeah, I just want to say, Marta, you're covering your.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Yeah. No, we heard it.
Okay, good enough.
Go ahead, Allison.
Yeah, I'll defer to. I see Victor's ready to answer that question.
Yeah, thanks, Allison. First of all, thanks for the amazing presentation. We are in proof space struggling constantly to find the way how to explain this complex technology to people. And I think you did the best. It was really amazing, like step by steps, very clearly. Thanks for this. I hope you will allow us to put your video on our site.
Thank you. That is high praise. Yes, please. I would love it.
That was awesome. And also what we are doing in proof space, we are trying to bring this technology to people by developing no-code platform which allow to define the interactions which a company and organization can have with the users based on verifiable credentials. And these interactions immediately appears in the app, so the user can see them and see what credential he or she is sharing and what will get back. All the process is clear to understand. We hope so, and we also trying to find the best way to adopt this technology through the simplification of usage. Regarding the question about zero knowledge, this is right, and the case Allison mentioned in her presentation regarding the age, when you may expose just age to the verifier, it can be done even more securely by providing a proof that your age is under or below 21, for example. And this proof means that you just answer the question in a crypto way without disclosing the actual age. So if someone is asking, are you above 21, you can prove that you're above 21, but you don't have to tell your actual age. And this is what the zero knowledge can bring to the technology. So in this solution, we may use such kind of proofs, as well as selective disclosure, as well as sharing the full credential. So yeah, that's all from this story.
If I could just follow up with one question regarding what he said, is that okay?
Yes,
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So so you're using zero knowledge proof in terms of making it secure, making the identification secure. I was told by other developers that if we don't use homomorphic encryption, that when we have quantum computers, that all that encryption will become moot. So you'll have to rebuild then. So is that something that is a consideration? For Cardano in general, and you may not be able to answer that because you're just working now on this one problem. But I wondered how would that work then if we have to rebuild everything in those future systems? Is that something that will be just addressed later and we'll just do that later?
So let me make one technical comment on that, and then I'll Victor, happily defer to you for a more technical answer. One of the things that I really appreciate about the SSI concepts is that even though it's connected to the blockchain industry, no one is talking about storing lots of personal data on the blockchain. Quite the opposite, actually. The idea with Atala PRISM is that only a proof that a credential has been issued is stored on the blockchain, not even the credential itself, which allows a holder of a credential to show it to somebody who needs to see it, who can prove that it was validly issued, but no other information is stored on the blockchain. So even if somebody were to look at that hash on the blockchain, they wouldn't get a whole lot of information about the data. The data is stored locally with the user. So that does get back to what I was saying before. Of course, somebody can hack into your phone and get to your data. There's probably no 100% foolproof way to keep your data from ever being hacked into. But what self-sovereign identity does is reduce the centralized pools of data. So it reduces the temptation for thieves to attack you. So it's much less interesting for a criminal to try to get just my data, as opposed to hacking into a central database where they're going to get 1 billion records. So then I'll turn it over, Nick or Victor, if you want to try to do a better job of improving on my answer.
Allison, you just explained how it works. Actually, yes, SSI uses blockchain just to store some public information. For example, Catalyst community can store their public deed on the blockchain, and it is visible for all the people, for all the users, and for all the verifiers. And if I present a credential that was issued by Catalyst, the verifier can find the Catalyst public key or deed in the blockchain and use it for verification. That's it. But my own interaction with the verifier is peer-to-peer from my wallet directly with the verifier. There is no anyone in the middle, and this interaction is just peer-to-peer. And yes, everything is stored on the phone, in the app, and someone can hack your phone, but it is completely another story than someone is hacking Twitter, for example, and stealing all the accounts of the people. The cost of the attack much more higher, which makes this attack much less effective and valuable.
Awesome, thank you. Juliana, I see your hand up.
Actually, if Tommy's your question is related to this,
no, go ahead.
Okay.
Another one.
Okay, so I was interested in. So you mentioned something about a reputation and using kind of tools for reputation. If you can clarify how the reputation will be built in terms of like, so you mentioned like finance and marketing professional skills in terms of the CA, and I was just curious to learn more about the reputation system and how this could be, how this you think could be used, and also if you consider, because mentioning marketing, finance, and that kind of stuff, so these are the professional skills that we as people have, but would you consider the soft skills like creativity, curiosity, interpersonal skills, and because CAs, for people, we have different kind of skills, and you cannot consider only the professional ones, because in the world of business, actually, I use most of my soft skills instead of the professional ones. So how do we, have a reputation on that, or would work?
Yeah, those are great questions. And so a couple of thoughts. First of all, I am nowhere near having a proposal to build a reputation model. I think that's a couple steps down the road. And the second point is your point about soft skills versus professional skills. I just threw that out there as an example. What I don't want to do and what I'm not proposing is to define the catalyst processes. I think there are other people who are really working to address and improve and iterate on how Catalyst itself works. Where my key interest is how to use SSI, self-sovereign identity, Atala PRISM technology in support of whatever those best ideas are that are going to come out of the Catalyst iteration and improvement processes. And so one thing that's talked about a lot is having a reputation model. And I think that there are a couple of different ways where SSI provides the perfect infrastructure to allow for a reputation model. And then the community could decide what the best way to take advantage of the features that SSI offers in order to build that reputation model. So for example, I'm talking about an educational institution of some kind issuing a credential for a CA onboarding course. But one thing that just came up, in fact, I think Michael's here, I think it's Michael's idea, is that CAs could teach each other how to, the basics of what's required to be a CA. So in the SSI world, you could have a CA who's passed the course, then have the capacity themselves to issue a credential to somebody else to say that they've passed the course. And so one way of building up reputation would be that you could get credentials from other individuals who could attest to your ability or skills or experience in particular domains. Because it doesn't necessarily have to be a centralized institution that's issuing a credential. So that would be one way of developing reputation. Another way is that educational institutions could issue diplomas, and so those could be tied to a CA's I'm sort of thinking out loud here. So again, I'm looking to Nick and Victor to rein me in here if I go off the reservation. But I think you could do it so that you could have a diploma that shows that you studied finance, and you could prove that finance credential while maintaining your anonymity. So that doesn't get to your question about soft skills, but you could have sort of like, I guess, like LinkedIn, people give testimonials. You could have some sort of a peer issued credential that would speak to emotional intelligence. I'm just kind of thinking out loud here. But what I'm trying to talk about is the features that SSI offers that could be utilized with the different ideas people have for how to improve the Catalyst process. And I just want to back up here, because I feel like I'm rambling a bit, but to talk about the specifics of my proposal, which is that the part that I am really focused on is coordinating between the SSI technology that Proofspace provides and the CA onboarding course content that is not going to come from me. I'm not dictating what's going to be in that course or how it's going to look like, but I see my role as facilitating how to implement the best ideas that are coming from the CA community using SSI tools. So I do want to make that distinction because it's important to me that I don't want to be the expert in CA course onboarding. I don't want to be the expert in reputation models. I don't want to be the expert in what kind of DID structure and onboarding do we need for proposers. But what I do want to be the expert in is how do we use SSI to support all of those initiatives?
Yeah, you're like the infrastructure facilitator. So we're trying to make a cake and you're just the person who puts it in the oven. You're not the chicken who laid the egg. You're not the guy who built the flour. You're just putting it all together. So that makes a lot of sense.
Juliana, I am definitely not the chicken who laid the egg. I think that's going to be my takeaway from, from today.
Tommy, did you?
Juliana, that's absolutely. Thank you for this answer. And it's just different questions from my curiosity. And another thing is that I think it's kind of like it's normal to be prepared to answer that kind of questions when you mention something like a reputation. So it's super normal. So if you mention something that you will be asked about this thing, not only in this meeting, but in general, I just noticed that when I speak and I need to select very carefully my words because people will ask questions. And if I don't want to be asked for something, I prefer not to say. But for example, also your solution, I think, will lead to many other things. And I think it's good just to think a couple of steps ahead. For example, as in the most simple example, like Facebook unlocked something, they didn't maybe think where they just lead, but try to. So yeah, good and negatives. I don't compare that with Facebook. I just say that it's good to think when we create that kind of solution, it will be a solution for many different things, and it's good just to look in different kind of objectives and angles. But yeah, I very much vote for your proposals.
Thank you.
Tommy.
I just want to add, excuse me, may I add to the reputation question? So the key idea is that in the SSI world, anyone can become an issuer, and you may issue any kind of credentials you can imagine. It can be even a personal recommendation to someone or whatever it can be. And when the credentials start to circulate in the community, anyone can become a verifier, so may request these credentials from people and build own reputation models to compete with other reputations models. Like we saw during the main town hall presentation, several projects, they use voting API or voting app API and develop own presentation of the proposal, how to navigate and all these things. Same with SSI and with verifiable credentials. And anyone can become a source of reputation, which can be somehow calculated based on the verifiable credentials, and then the community may decide what kind of model works best.
Got it. Tommy.
So maybe my question is in two parts for two different people. So maybe Victor, you can continue. First part is your solution, proof space, is it based on Atala PRISM?
We actually developing it during last 3 years, and we built proof space network based on Indy, Hyperledger Indy, and our current proposals, Fund 7 and Fund 8, are aimed to integrate Atala PRISM with Indy credentials inside the proof space network. So the proof space will support both identity networks and provide binding of these credentials on the wallet layer, and services may use both credentials.
So going forward, you could have dozens or hundreds or thousands of different identity providers. Identity providers, you mean those who issue credentials? Yeah, maybe I got things mixed, but yeah. Okay, I got it. So then, Allison, what is the readiness level of Atala PRISM? Because when you look at things how they were like a year ago and how they are now, it looks almost the same when you look at it from the outside. And is there something that can be holding you back? Like, is there something that IOG needs to deliver before you can say that my proposal can be done? Or
yes,
are there some other dependencies like Roots wallet or something like that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, because there's been a lot of conversation about the readiness of the technology. So one of the reasons I was so excited to meet Nick and Victor and Ruslan and Proofspace is that their experience and the tools and infrastructure they've already built for this environment really allows this project to be ready to go. We've just leapfrogged, a huge amount of work that needs to be done. So that's really exciting. Regarding the readiness of Atala PRISM, so it is not ready. It is operating on the test net right now. It's not on mainnet yet. So that is a limiting factor. Victor just mentioned Proofspace was funded in Fund 7, and I have seen their reports working hard to integrate Atala PRISM into their infrastructure. They will be limited by the readiness of PRISM to go to mainnet, and there are a lot of other factors that need to be sorted out there. The great thing is that with the flexibility of the Proofspace tools, we have a lot of different ways we could go to implement this project quickly, depending on what's important. And so I'll just say again how lucky I am to have found Proofspace and to be able to use what they've spent years developing to bring this project to life quickly.
Also, what we do for Atala PRISM is we use our UI tools that comes from Hyperledger Indy. We develop them to use to work with Hyperledger Indy credentials, but we use them to create schemas and credential definitions for Atala PRISM, and then issue credential in Atala PRISM, but based on the schemas and credentials from Indy, which allow to use Atala PRISM, but with the tools and with the features that are already exist in Indy. And I believe this will also help Atala PRISM core team to decide and to see what is needed to add and how these features can be used when they will be developed.
Well, thank you. I actually had a question, unless anybody had a response to that. And that is, so if anyone can be a verifier or somebody that can issue a credential, and we're all holding our own, what is to make it easier for people just to make more identities? Or, if there's not, you know what I mean? Just like how are all these things verified if they're being verified by and issued by a number of people? There's not a, in each country, there's a certain, it looks like this, it was issued by this person. And now if just like anybody, now you're going to have a lot of different companies trying to create their own businesses to do this. How do we tell the difference?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's another component of the core SSI concepts that I didn't get into because it's not relevant for this project, but it's the concept of a trust registry. So that's the idea that gets to exactly your question: which issuers should we trust? And so let's leave aside, with apologies to Michael, the concept of study buddies and that anybody could issue a CA onboarding credential. And let's just assume we want to have only qualified educational institutions that can issue the CA onboarding course credential. So we only want to trust certain educational institutions. And so what we would do, in my proof of concept, we have one. So that's why I envision one, which is why the concept of trust registries didn't come up. But let's say maybe we have 3 or 4 or 5, and the verifier wants to know that the CA's credential was issued by a trusted educational institution and not just anybody. And so that issuer's DID would be registered in a trust registry that the verifier understands and has access to and can check when they check the CA's credential. And the building of those trust registries and how the communication works between the parties involved, the issuer, the holder, and the verifier, is defined through a series of documents that's called a governance framework. And writing those and figuring out how all of those pieces work together is really hard. But that is more of the work that I envision would be my contribution to the process. But so that, just a brief answer to the question, that data is stored in a trust registry, and that's a requirement for the process.
Cool. And Megan actually, she had written in the chat, is there any way to prevent bad faith stuff, like people who just go onto Yelp and write up bad reviews, anti-endorsements to competitor companies, or people that just dislike someone trying to block them from gaining reputation? And then there was an answer from Michael. Interesting question about validity of credentials that are based on skills, knowledge, ideas, some kind of challenge mechanism or an aggregation over time or a larger sample size are ideas that he's heard of. And then Joe, the future reputation will be built over time in many different contexts. Your identity and curation of that will be in your control rather than in institutions, maybe. Okay. Just wanted to read that for Megan, who is at work probably. The other thing I had, go ahead, did you have?
Just wanted to say to Megan, with that, I mean, so biometric data would help with that, right? So if somebody's biometric data was read from their eye, then nobody can impersonate that. So you wouldn't be able to have those kinds of false presentations of identity before a credential was issued. But I think this is more, Allison's project is more of sort of a proof of concept, sort of trying to think about how, because I mean, if somebody broke into your phone and took away your credential for a CA, it wouldn't be the end of the world. So it's kind of a way to sort of, to me, that's how I view it, to try to see how this all works within the system of Cardano Catalyst, and sort of bring up some of the issues, see what issues might come up.
Scott asks who holds the biometric data.
And that's what it's supposed to be you. It's you, you're supposed to hold it, Scott. As from what I've heard of other people, but I don't know.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. And then
Nick, do you want to say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was
Mike.
actually going to suggest on the biometric side, we're lucky to have Victor and Ruslan on the call, who have looked into biometrics in relation to SSI a bit. I wonder if either of you guys have any comments. Mine might be a little bit too superficial for the audience.
Okay.
Well, with biometric, we originally came from Africa, and we did projects, SSI related project there. And there is a huge problem, well, not a problem, but the reality that people don't have smartphones. So we were thinking how to bring SSI in the feature phone world. And one of the solution was a voice biometric, with which people may control their SSI delegated wallets while they will get a smartphone. And then this wallet can be migrated to the smartphone and they can continue using it with all the features that we propose. So the biometric in this case can be used as a identifier, which gives even more security without like storing this biometric data in the blockchain. You have it in your in your voice, in your phone, as a fingerprint of your voice, and then as any verifiable credential, you may share it with a service, and then next time you call this service, you may be identified by the voice, which can eliminate the fraud or help with the case when the phone is stolen and some critical credentials or interactions cannot happen without your voice confirmation. As an example, yeah.
That's amazing.
Other
I'm
kind,
gonna go
sorry.
ahead.
I mean, other kind of biometric can be used as well, but this what we, the solution we almost released. I hope it will be done soon.
That's awesome. And I'm gonna let Michael go. I just have one last quick question for Allison. Cybersecurity companies, do you think that if you use this as an example to kind of get more of your feet wet and get experience in understanding how to be this, bridging this gap of self-sovereign identity, do you think cybersecurity companies are just going to go away, or do you think your approach would be to approach them as the people that you would maybe sell your services to, or something like that, to be these people who are utilizing this technology?
Yeah, that's a great question. And can you still hear me? By the way, my AirPods died, so now I'm using my computer. Okay. So I mentioned that my background's in finance. I was a banker, and fraud and tricking bank customers into sending their data to fraudsters is a huge problem. So I'd like to say, why bother breaking into the bank when you can just trick someone into sending you the money and authorizing the transaction legitimately? And then when I moved to Switzerland, actually, the last job that I had before I left to launch Crypto Alley, I worked for a cybersecurity company that was trying to combat the problem of people getting tricked into sending money to fraudsters. So my simple flip answer to your question is that self-sovereign identity would hopefully eliminate all of those problems, because if you have a secure DID-to-DID connection, there's much less likelihood, actually it would be almost impossible for somebody to trick you into thinking you're sending money or communicating to somebody that's not the person that you think you're talking to. That is kind of the whole point of SSI, that you know exactly who you're connected to. And once you're connected to that person, you have a secure connection that lasts. But ideally we'd put them all the cybersecurity companies out of business, and banks wouldn't have to spend, well, banks would, but companies wouldn't have to spend the budgets that they're spending today on cybersecurity, because they wouldn't have customer data that they would need to protect in the way that they do today. I mean, but that's a long-term future vision. In the interim, yeah, I think that there's probably a lot of overlap between cybersecurity and looking at the ways that moving to a self-sovereign identity model would make data more secure and improve general security practices. So yeah, I think there's definitely a business opportunity there.
Awesome. Okay, Michael, I'm going to let you go. But just to let everyone know, I'm going to hop off in a few minutes. I have another meeting. Juliana is going to take the reins. But Michael, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. This question is kind of a segue to what Allison just said, and concerning the role of the verifier. And if I'm understanding this, it seems kind of like it's kind of a buyer's market for the verifier, in that people would need to sort of convince the verifier that this is a legit credential. I'm reminded in the educational world where, in one jurisdiction, somebody coming in with a different credential, there's a whole, part of the government that decides, are we accepting, your teaching degree from South Africa, or are we not going to do that? And I'd just like to maybe invite Nick, put Nick on the spot, because at 121, Nick answered my question on that one. And I don't quite understand everything that I think I kind of understand. I don't know what ZKP is though. So just to confirm, I guess, that, there'd be potentially multiple verifiers, and this idea of, if the credentials get compromised somehow from within, like bad actors and, somebody attacking someone's reputation, that in a way, it still depends on what the verifier is going to accept, kind of thing. So it's still just a credential, and it's still up to the verifier to accept it or not, kind of thing. And there could actually be like an alternate scheme of, you could get your credentials built in this system, or you could get your credentials built maybe with another system. Is that true? And I'm not sure who best to answer that, but maybe Nick could start us off and just expand on what he said there, and then if other people have comments.
I can try. So within let's kind of follow the logic that Allison highlighted earlier regarding the trust registry. Within that trust registry, there may be a set of credentials that are based on a standard, which is called a credential schema. And credentials that are based on that standard would be trustworthy by the verifiers in the network. So if you want to verify credentials, you would elect to trust credentials that adhere to a particular credential schema, which would be the standard of that credential within the network. And so any issuer of a credential that follows that credential schema, in other words, that follows that standard, is trustworthy if that issuer also belongs within the trust registry. Now, the verifier has the right to ask for all of the attributes within the credential, or some of the attributes within the credential. And there's in kind of outside of self-sovereign identity, GDPR has us minimizing GDPR practices. Like GDPR have us require us to minimize the data that we capture from users. That's expected of businesses. And so selective disclosure allows organizations, verifiers to minimize the data that they capture from a credential by design. They can select the particular attributes that they need, and then they can verify that those attributes are correct. If it's use of something like a zero knowledge predicate, it could be like, and a zero knowledge predicate is in a way, it's like the functional use of a zero knowledge proof. So you would say that, the classic use cases only provide services to someone who is over the age of 18. So you verify that this person is over the age of 18. When we talk about reputation and skills, it's skill models. It's more like a certain reputation score is over the required threshold, and the verifier would be able to set that threshold. It's their liability that they're managing. So there's a great deal of choice available to verifiers, but that choice would be somehow defined by the standards and the trust registry. If that's goes some way towards answering your question, Michael.
Yeah. I'm sort of naturally skeptical about educational institutions, having worked in them for 20 years, and I'm skeptical about the validity of the assessment, but that's completely different topic. So, yeah, thank you. So I think what you it comes down to that trust registry and the, I guess you could say, the understanding, the expectations and the standards that are implied with you going through a trust registry. I think that answers my question.
Okay, thanks, Michael.
Thank you.
Also in Fund 8, we have a proposal to develop a way how the trust registry can be formed through the smart contract by voting for those who can be trusted, and through this technique, these trust registries can be developed by the community or other organizations, etc.
Okay, cool. Michael, do you have any other follow-on questions? No. Yeah, the forever question about trust. How do we trust? It's it's interesting topic. Nadia?
Allison, this is maybe like a tough question. I hope it's not a tough question. What is some of the pushback or like maybe opposing feedback you've gotten to the proposal, to your proposal? It's an interesting thing because we have these ideas and everything, you work it out and you think, but then there's always someone who goes, this thing. Is there feedback that you've gotten along this process of proposing and thinking about this, that you've had to really consider what you're doing more deeply? And what are some of the things that you've found as responses to those things? And maybe this is for you and the whole group.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you, Nadia. And I mean, for all I'm talking about improving the CA process, I was actually really pleased with the feedback that I got from CAs. So first of all, I have to start by saying this proposal had more reviews than any other proposal in the category, and it rated a 4.7. So I was really thrilled about that. But as far as the things that made me think, there were some interesting points that CAs made. One CA didn't like the idea of an onboarding course at all. So they didn't like the barrier to including any kind of a barrier to entry to make it more difficult or add another step for a person to become a CA. And I've really been thinking about that a lot because I love the openness of Catalyst. I love the fact that people from all over the world with all different backgrounds, with all kinds of skills and experiences and different backgrounds and some technical knowledge or not. I love this community of people who are coming together, and I don't want to add bureaucracy or make it more difficult or add barriers to entry. So that's really pushed me from the content side and from what the course looks like to work with as broad a segment of the CA community as possible to ensure that course process is as low a barrier to entry as it could possibly be, while still achieving the objectives. And actually, I have to highlight the work that Michael has done to put together the beginning, or actually I'd say more than the beginnings, a really, really good start to identifying what just the core competencies that a CA needs. So leaving aside all of the stuff we were talking about, soft skills, hard skills, but what is it that a CA does need to know how to do in order to be a CA? And basic things like have an idea scale account and understand impact, feasibility, and auditability, like those core things that I think there would be really broad agreement among CAs that, yeah, you really do need to know that in order to be a CA. And so I think that's really important. Somebody critiqued the timeline, and that feeds into some other criticisms and conversations in the community. And I think it goes to Tommy's question earlier, what's the status of the technology? I think that because PRISM is still relatively new, and I mean, new to the fact that it's not even on mainnet yet, and the PRISM community of developers and PRISM tools is all still very much in the early stages. I think that there's some confusion around the feasibility for this project. But again, I already covered this, but really ProofSpace is the silver bullet in that respect, and having built all of what's needed to make this work, and now taking the final step of incorporating PRISM. Trying to think if I got any other CA feedback. There were, some comments on the timing and the budget, and I think those are fair. It's really hard to know how long this is going to take and what all it's going to involve, because there's so many moving pieces and so many unknowns. And so that's something that I'm committed to doing, and we'll figure it out as we go along. I think one of the biggest, actually, I'm really happy that Danny is here. One of the biggest potential issues to implementation is that IOG on the Catalyst team is going to have to agree to make some of the changes that this project would require. And so I've been having conversations with Chris, and also very much the PRISM Catalyst IOG team, sorry, the IOG PRISM team. But we will need IOG to agree to do this. So Danny, I hope you're listening. I can't think of any other hard questions or feedback that I got at the moment. I welcome hard questions, though.
That's the best questions, because that
Exactly.
prepares you. So it's yeah. If anyone has any hard questions, now is the moment. So we prepare Allison better for her next presentation.
Let me caveat that. I welcome hard questions, but maybe not going on hour like 3 of.
Okay. So yeah. If anyone has any other questions, Allison, can you share? I shared your proposals, but maybe if you have a quick link, I can share them as well again for those who haven't seen the links to your proposals.
Yes, let me see if I can find them quickly. And I should have been, I should have had a link to my presentation, which I don't at the moment. Oh yeah, thank you.
We can attach, if you send the link after that, we can attach that in the video in the description.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I'll do that. I have to upload it, and then I'll send it to you. That'd be great.
Michael?
I just thought of a hard, maybe it's a hard question. For me, it is. I need to hear this thing about 17 times before it starts to penetrate a little bit. The trust registry thing, like in the Catalyst context, who or what is going to be providing that trust registry function? Or is that not, doesn't that have to be thought about right now? But have you thought about that at all?
Well, yes, that's a great question. It is a hard question. Yes, I've thought about it. The simple answer is I wouldn't use a trust registry in the proof of concept, because I don't envision having more than one educational institution. So there would be one issuer, and that issuer would be known to the verifier, and there would be one verifier. Going forward, actually, it's an excellent question, and it really gets to the heart of Catalyst governance, is that who would be the one to say which educational institutions, and I'm using the term, by the way, educational institution very loosely. I mean, it could be Catalyst School, it could be Morey Shanks LearnerShape, it could be peer-to-peer, but I really just meant whatever team of people is going to be tasked with delivering the onboarding course content. Where was I going with this? Oh yeah, but I mean, I think that's a core governance question. Who is going to make that kind of decision for the Catalyst community going forward? I mean, right now, it just like IOG has decided to use IdeaScale, it might be IOG that decides which groups or teams or educational institutions can deliver the onboarding course. But going forward, it certainly shouldn't be. I mean, maybe it's something like the Catalyst Circle, maybe it's the CA community, maybe we let Nadia decide as the CA circle rep. I was kidding. But yeah, that's an excellent question. Because I mean, I think SSI solves a huge number of problems, and I obviously just tried to lay those all out, but it doesn't solve everything. I mean, at the end of the day, you still have to decide who you trust, and there has to be somebody who writes and agrees to the governance documents, and that's still going to be a hard question that we have to answer as a community.
Yeah, that was a really good question, and I was also wondering about this, and also thinking like if education institutions are the one that will, yeah, it's a difficult question to answer. Okay, so if anyone has any other questions, you can ask. If not, we are 90 minutes in this meeting, and I would prefer to leave you, have a dinner, morning coffee, or whatever you have, and just keep it that way, because I know it's very tiring to have very long meetings and it's not productive. Alison, if you want to have some kind of key messages or whatever it is, yeah.
I would love to say thank you, Juliana. Thank you to, Dana's not here, but all the Cardano Women in Blockchain for hosting me. This has been great. And Nadia, thank you for pushing me to do this. And Nick and Victor and Ruslan, thank you so much for spending so much time here to speak to all the depth of your experience and do such a wonderful job answering questions. This has been a huge amount of fun for me, and I'm looking forward to working on this project. So thank you.
Thank you for participating and for letting us for these great proposals. Yeah, let's everyone vote for this, and thank you for participating, everyone. Such a great meeting, and yeah, join again.